The sea was calm the day Ava and Elise went missing. The Marina Belle had just left its final Caribbean port, humming along back toward Florida, carrying over 2,000 souls, two of them 12-year-old twin sisters who shared everything from matching freckles to a fear of deep water. They were last seen by the pool deck around 4:45 p.m., giggling, sharing an ice cream cone. After that, nothing. No screams, no splashes, no sign of struggle, just gone. Their mother, Claire Donovan, a 36-year-old single mom and travel blogger, sounded the alarm within 20 minutes of realizing they hadn't come back to the cabin. Security scoured every floor. The captain turned the ship inside out. Cameras were checked and even the Coast Guard got involved. But all they found was a half-melted cone near the railing and a necklace tangled in a deck chair. People speculated. Maybe they fell overboard. Maybe they ran off. Maybe something worse. The media tore it apart for weeks. "Missing twins at sea," screamed every headline. Claire did every interview, begged the world for answers, sobbed until she couldn't. Breathe on live TV. But then silence came creeping in and the world moved on. Claire didn't. For a full year she became obsessed. Every blurry photo of a child on Facebook, every news article about kids found in basements or border towns, she followed them all, slept 3 hours a night. Her hair started to grey. People whispered she'd lost it. Her family begged her to let go, but she knew something wasn't right. Then the Suitcase came. It washed up on a rocky shore in Nova Scotia, torn, sun-bleached, stinking of the ocean. A local fisherman thought it was just junk until he saw the stickers on it. A faded Disney Cruise Line tag, a cracked pink unicorn badge that matched one Elise had begged for back in Miami. Inside was worse. A tiny sandal, a Barbie missing its head, a toothbrush with Ava's name engraved on the handle, and wedged into the lining, rotting scraps of what might have been a journal page. The ink was blurred by salt and time, but one sentence still screamed, "We're not alone in the dark." The police reopened the case but moved slowly. Claire didn't. She flew to Nova Scotia the next day. As the cold wind slapped her face and seagulls circled overhead, Claire stood over the spot where the Suitcase had landed and whispered their names like a prayer. Ava. Elise. It wasn't an accident. She felt it in her bones. Something had taken her girls, and now it was leaving breadcrumbs. But why? To torment her? To lead her somewhere? She didn't know. All she knew was that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Claire checked into a small inn called the Driftwood Shore, just a few miles from where the Suitcase had been found. It was off-season, so the place was nearly empty. Just her and a few fishermen who barely spoke and kept to themselves. The owner, a hunched woman in her 70s named Mags, handed Claire the key and a cup of lukewarm tea. "You came for the girls, didn't you?" Mags asked, her pale eyes scanning Claire's face. Claire stiffened. "What do you mean?" "The Suitcase," Mags replied calmly, as if they were discussing weather. "Everyone around here's heard about it. Was all over the radio last week. Cops came sniffing around, asked their questions, then disappeared again like they always do." Claire swallowed the rising panic in her throat. "You believe it belonged to my daughters?" Mags looked down at her gnarled hands. "I believe the sea don't give back what it takes unless it wants to." That night Claire lay in bed, the Suitcase photos open on her phone, her eyes red from crying. She zoomed in again on the note. "We're not alone in the dark." The scrawl didn't look like Ava or Elise's handwriting. It was jagged, erratic. Rushed. Was it a warning, a cry for help, or something left behind by someone else? She couldn't sleep. At 3:12 a.m., Claire slipped on a coat, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out into the bitter night. The air was thick with fog, the ocean crashing violently nearby. She followed the path down to the rocky shore where the Suitcase had washed. Up. Waves slapped at the stones as her boots crunched forward. She stood there staring out into black nothingness, the kind of darkness that swallows everything whole. Suddenly, a sharp, cold wind shot past her, strong enough to make her stagger. That's when she heard it, a giggle. High-pitched, familiar, childlike. It cut through the howl of the ocean bouncing off the rocks, then a second one, fainter, like it was underwater. Claire spun around, flashing her light wildly. "Ava! Elise!" Nothing, just waves. Her heart pounded. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "please don't play games with me." The flashlight flickered. Claire stopped breathing. It did it again. Flicker. Then die. Total. Blackness. And then a hand touched her shoulder. She screamed and fell back, hitting the rocks hard. The flashlight hit the ground and blinked back to life for a split second, enough to reveal nothing behind her. No one. Just air. Just the wind. By the time she scrambled back to the inn, her hands were bleeding and her knees shaking. Mags was waiting in the hallway, still in her robe. "Something followed you, didn't it?" Claire didn't speak. "Couldn't." Mags walked her to her room, and as she opened the door, she whispered, "Don't go back there alone again. The sea isn't done yet." The next morning, Claire went straight to the local RCMP station. She demanded to see the suitcase, demanded to know what had been found in it since the last report. The officer at the desk, Constable Denny, seemed kind but tired. "We still don't know where it came from," he said, scratching at his beard. "And there's something off about it, Miss Donovan." Claire leaned in. "What do you mean off?" He hesitated. "It's moldy. Smells like seawater. But here's the weird part. There's no barnacles. No algae, no marine life. It's as if it didn't spend a year in the ocean, more like a few days, maybe a week. That suitcase wasn't drifting out there for 12 months. Claire's heart dropped. Someone had kept it. He tapped a file on the desk. "We also found traces of synthetic blood inside. Not human. Lab-made. Like what you'd use in a medical facility or certain kinds of experiments." "What kind of experiments?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Did your daughters have any health conditions? Special medications?" Claire shook her head. "They were healthy. Never even broke a bone." The constable looked worried now. "We've contacted a few people who might know more. You'll be hearing from someone soon." She stood to leave, but something on the bulletin board caught her eye. It was a blurry black and white photo. Kids on a dock, taken at night. But two figures at the edge looked familiar. The height, the shape of their heads. She pointed. "Where's that from?" "Security cam," Denny said. "Taken at a private dock not far from here, 2 nights before the suitcase appeared." Claire's blood ran cold. They looked exactly like Ava and Elise. He added, "That dock's been abandoned since 2014. No reason for anyone to be there." Claire didn't speak. She couldn't. She just stared at the photo. If that was her daughters, if they were somehow alive, they weren't just lost. They were being hidden. And whatever had brought that suitcase back was only just getting started. Claire drove to the abandoned dock herself. The road was barely a road, overgrown with weeds and crumbling in places, like nature was trying to forget it ever existed. Her rental car groaned over the gravel until she parked beside a collapsed gate with a rusted "No Trespassing" sign dangling sideways. The sky above was heavy and grey, casting everything in a dull silver light. The dock stretched out into the sea like a scar, rotting and splintered, disappearing into fog. She walked slowly, every step creaking beneath her, until she reached the edge, right where the photo had shown the children. There was nothing now but waves, no signs, no footprints, just a cold breeze carrying salt and secrets. But something wasn't right. A strange humming buzzed faintly in her ears. Not mechanical, more like a deep underwater throb, rhythmic. 2, steady to be random. And with it came a smell, metallic like blood and ozone mixed together. She crouched near a rusted crate and saw something wedged beneath it. A pink wristband, worn, sun-bleached, cracked, the kind cruise ships give kids for ID and safety tracking. Claire's hands trembled as she picked it up. It was Ava's. Her, name still barely visible. Suddenly she felt watched. Her skin crawled with the sensation of invisible eyes. Claire stood up fast and looked around. No one. But something was out there. She left the dock and drove straight to a man named Dr. Eli Kessler. He was the someone the police mentioned, a former marine biologist turned private researcher who'd been consulting on strange coastal phenomena. According to Denny, Kessler had been studying unusual frequencies picked up along certain Atlantic shores for the past 2 years, frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature. He answered the door of his cliffside lab wearing a hoodie, salt-stained jeans, and red eyes that hadn't seen proper sleep in days. "You're Claire Donovan," he said before she even introduced herself. "I've been expecting you." Claire froze. "How?" He motioned her inside. "Come in, I'll show you something." The place was part lab, part bunker. Laptops blinked on tables. Tangled wires ran along the walls, and maps covered in pins and scribbles were taped everywhere. There were photos, too. Satellite images, heat signatures, sonar maps of the ocean floor. Kessler pulled up a digital waveform on a screen. "This is what we started picking up about 13 months ago, just days after your daughters disappeared." The waveform pulsed in eerie, almost musical rhythms. Claire didn't understand the science, but it chilled her just listening to it. "This signal isn't man-made," Kessler said, "but it's intelligent. It has structure, repetition, modulation, and it moves. Every time we track it, it relocates, sometimes near deep-sea vents, sometimes near coastal caves. It's like it's aware." Claire gripped her arms tightly. "You think it's related?" "To my daughters," he nodded. "We got a strong signal spike 2 nights ago, right off that abandoned dock, same spot where the security photo was taken, and yesterday, a diver we hired to check the area went missing." Claire's heart thundered. "Missing how?" He radioed in, said he saw something big and unnatural, then silence. No body, no gear. Nothing came back. Kessler turned toward her, face grim. "I don't think your daughters drowned, Ms. Donovan. I think they were taken." Claire's voice cracked. "By who?" "Not who," he whispered. "By what?" She couldn't breathe. "You ever heard of the Mariana Beacon Project?" he asked suddenly. She shook her head. Back in 2012, a government-funded deep-sea research mission planted transmitters at the deepest points in the ocean. One of them started sending back strange data, fluctuations in temperature, seismic activity, audio anomalies. It pinged only once every few years, until a year ago. Since then, it's been non-stop. He pulled up another screen. A live sonar, feed-pulsed red dots in the Atlantic. "That's the source," he said, "and it's moving closer." Claire swallowed. "Closer to what?" He stared at her. "To you." Claire hadn't slept in over 30 hours. She sat in the corner of Dr. Kessler's lab, knees drawn to her chest, headphones clamped over her ears. The signal, the one that had begun after her daughters vanished, played on repeat. It sounded like a heartbeat mixed with static and a distant chime that came every 42 seconds. It was hypnotic, maddening. "It's not just noise," Kessler told her, pacing nearby. "I've run it through dozens of programs. There's a pattern hidden in the rhythm, almost like a language." Claire peeled off the headphones. "What kind of language?" He hesitated. "Something non-human, maybe even non-organic." She gave him a hard stare. "What are you saying, that it's aliens?" "No," he said. "Not exactly. Something older, deeper. I think something ours living down there long before we ever learned to swim." A silence settled between them. Claire didn't want to believe it. Couldn't. But the suitcase, the wristband, the photo of 2 girls who looked exactly like Ava and Elise standing on a dock no one used. "Then why take my daughters out?" she asked finally. Kessler sat. "That's the question, isn't it?" Later that afternoon, Claire and Kessler drove to the cliffs above the shoreline where the suitcase washed up. Kessler brought a scanner, an odd device with a dish on top that whirred and blinked with lights. He set it down and calibrated it. "If this thing pings again," he said, "we'll know how close it is." Claire stared out at the ocean. A year ago, she would have found this view beautiful. Now it just looked like a lie. Then the device let out a single ping, then another, and another. Kessler stiffened. "Something's here." The screen on the scanner flashed with a set of coordinates. Kessler's brow furrowed. "It's close. Less than a mile offshore." Suddenly his phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from one of his old diver contacts, a man named Ronnie Travers, who'd worked on Black Ops marine retrieval for the Navy before going independent. Kessler had sent him a sample of the suitcase, fabric days ago. In the message, Ronnie's voice was shaky. You didn't tell me where this came from, Eli. I had it tested by a guy who used to work at DARPA. This thing's made from composite threads that aren't even public yet. Government tech. Classified level materials. This wasn't a kid's suitcase, this was a plant. Then a final whisper on the voicemail. They're watching us, Eli. I think they're trying to find the woman. Claire felt like ice water had been poured down her back. What does that mean? A plant? Kessler's face had gone pale. It means that suitcase didn't drift here by accident. Someone wanted it found, and it might not have come from the sea. It might have come from a lab. They drove straight back to his lab, but something was wrong when they arrived. The front door was wide open. Inside, equipment was smashed, computers stripped, maps torn down. "Someone's been here," Claire whispered, backing up. Kessler scanned the room, then picked up a scrap of torn map on the floor. A single word had been circled in red ink before the rest was ripped away. Chimera. Before they could think about what it meant, a voice called out behind them. "You need to come with me now." It was a woman, tall, military posture, cropped hair, dressed in civilian clothes, but with unmistakable government steel in her voice. She held up a badge, not police, not FBI, something that just said Division M. "I've been following your work, Dr. Kessler," she said. Then she turned to Claire. "And I've been watching you since the day your girls disappeared." Claire stepped back. "Who are you?" "My name is Agent Morgan." She opened a small silver case and placed something on the table. A single photo. It was Ava and Elise, hair cut shorter, thinner, pale, but smiling, and standing next to C. Then was a man Claire had never seen before, his face clean-shaven, eyes too dark, too flat. The back of the photo read, "Facility CH7, subject twins, status stable." Claire collapsed into a chair, her hands over her mouth. "They're alive," she whispered. Agent Morgan nodded. "Yes, but they're not the same girls you lost. Not anymore." Claire stared at her, the floor seeming to tilt beneath her. "I want them back," she said, her voice shaking. Morgan didn't blink. "Then you're going to need to understand what they've become." Claire couldn't feel her legs. She just sat there, staring at the photo. Her daughters were alive, breathing, somewhere in the world, but the word facility kept hammering her brain like a drum. That wasn't a home. That wasn't rescue. It was containment. Agent Morgan dropped into the chair across from her and said nothing for a moment, just studied her, like a case file that had finally turned the last page. "I'm not supposed to show you that," Morgan said, "but we don't have time anymore. Things are accelerating." Claire's voice cracked. "Where is this place? Facility CH7? Morgan opened her case again and slid out a small black flash drive. "This will show you more than I'm allowed to say." Claire stared at. "You don't trust your own people?" "I trust what's right," she replied. "Your daughters were taken by a rogue offshoot of a classified marine genetics program called Chimera. It was decommissioned 7 years ago, officially, but a few factions didn't let it go. They moved it offshore, underwater, untouchable by law." Claire shook her head. "You're telling me the US government kidnapped my kids?" Morgan's face tightened. "Not exactly. They were taken after the cruise incident. But I believe the incident was orchestrated. The cruise line was a partner in Chimera. The girls were identified and flagged, genetic markers. Something about their DNA made them perfect for the program's experiments." Claire stood up, voice rising. "What experiments?" Morgan looked away for a second, then met her eyes. "They were trying to develop human beings that could adapt to extreme underwater conditions. Pressure, cold, oxygen deprivation, telepathic signal interpretation." Claire went still. "You're saying they've been experimenting on my daughters to turn them into—" "What? Sea creatures?" Morgan's eyes didn't flinch. "Hybrids. The original goal was to create a breed of humans who could live below the sea. Autonomous units, deep-sea colonization projects. But something happened during early testing. The subjects began to change, mentally, emotionally. They stopped responding like humans. Started syncing with the signal Kessler's been tracking," Claire whispered. The one that sounds like it's alive. Morgan nodded. They didn't just survive down there, she said. They adapted, connected to something we don't fully understand. Claire stared at her, throat dry. So why release the suitcase? Morgan answered flatly. I think your daughters wanted to be found. Kessler finally broke his silence from the corner. If the signal's moving closer to shore, are they bringing it with them? Morgan didn't answer right away. Then she said, We believe something ancient is waking up, and your daughters might be part of it. Claire's knees buckled slightly, but she caught herself. Morgan stood. We leave tonight. I'm taking you to someone who's been there, who escaped. The man's name was Silas Rain. He lived in an abandoned lighthouse on a cliff edge, shrouded in wind and fog. He was maybe in his 60s, bones like driftwood, and his eyes darted like they were used to being watched. Morgan told Claire he was one of the original engineers of Facility CH7 before he disappeared 2 years ago. When he saw Claire, he froze, then said only one thing. They're not your daughters anymore. Claire clenched her jaw. You don't get to say that. He motioned her inside with a trembling hand. You want answers? I'll give you nightmares instead. The inside of the lighthouse was cluttered with journals, old sonar records, hand-drawn diagrams of massive tentacled shapes and humanoid silhouettes with blackened eyes. He showed her an old photograph of the facility, before it went dark. Built into a cliffside trench off the coast of Greenland, CH7 looked more like a sunken prison than a lab. Thick steel tubes, chamber rooms, pressure locks. Silas said they took the first batch of children from orphanages. No paper trail. When that dried up, they started watching cruise lines, island ports. Anywhere people vanish easy. Claire stared in horror. And the experiments? He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. They weren't just building swimmers. They were trying to create conduits, humans who could receive transmissions from down below. From what? He pointed at a drawing. Something massive, circular. Eyeless. They called it Leviathan Zero. We drilled into it, thought it was part of the ocean floor, but it moved. It sent back signals through the kids, not speech, impressions, and it liked Ava and Elise. Claire clutched her stomach. Sick. Silas turned cold. You want them back? You'll have to go to where the signal's strongest, near the trench mouth, but if you do, you might not like what's left of them. Morgan stood by the door. We leave at dawn. That's when the signal aligns with the coast. It's our only chance to find the access point. Claire looked at her. I don't care what they've become, she said through tears. They're my daughters. I'm bringing them home. The boat left at first light. It was small, rusted, and loud enough to be heard for miles, but Morgan insisted it was off the radar grid. Too old for satellite pings, too insignificant to be tracked. Claire sat near the bow, wind whipping through her hair, staring at the steel-grey waves. They were heading toward the coordinates Silas had scrawled on the back of a cigarette carton. 47. 98 de Gran. 38. 10 de Glas. The trench mouth. She hadn't spoken in an hour. Kessler adjusted equipment in the back. Sonar gear, signal readers, waterproof. Drones. Morgan sat calmly, legs crossed, checking her weapon. The sea around them grew darker, heavier. The air felt denser. Claire noticed that birds had stopped following them. At noon, the boat slowed. This is it, Morgan said, peering over the edge. Claire looked down. Nothing but black water and silence. Kessler dropped a probe into the sea. It sank for what? Felt like minutes, then pinged. Chamber depth confirmed, he muttered. Something's still active down there. Claire's stomach turned. So what now? We suit up, Morgan said. She handed Claire a thick black wetsuit, custom-fitted for deep descent. Claire hesitated. She wasn't trained. She wasn't brave. She was a mother who still woke, up screaming. But when she zipped up the suit, she felt something settle inside her, something hard and focused. They dove together, down into the dark. The water swallowed them whole within seconds. The boat disappeared above. Light vanished. By 50 feet. At 100, Claire's breathing grew tight. Kessler and Morgan stayed close, using directional tethers to keep them linked. The sonar buzzed in Kessler's hand. Ping, ping, ping. Then the trench opened beneath them like a mouth, blacker than space. It was like descending into a wound carved into the planet. At 600 feet, the signal grew louder, not just in the equipment, in her head. Claire felt it, a deep thrum vibrating inside her skull. Not noise, not sound, a presence, watching, testing. Suddenly, shapes moved in the water, thin, fast, human-sized. Claire gasped, and bubbles shot from her mask. One of the shapes moved directly in front of her and paused. A girl. No, not just a girl, Ava. Her hair floated around her head like kelp, her skin paler than snow, and her eyes completely black, not empty, not dead, awake. Ava reached out and touched Claire's faceplate. Claire choked out, "Ava, it's me, baby, it's Mom." Ava didn't blink. She just mouthed one word, "Go." Then she vanished. Claire tried to follow, but Morgan grabbed her. Not yet. Below them lights appeared, dim and green, flickering through the gloom like the windows of a buried city. The facility. Kessler guided them toward a broken access hatch wedged, halfway open. It looked like it had been forced apart from the inside. They entered. Inside was worse than Claire could have imagined. Pressure-lock tunnels, viewing rooms, broken tanks filled with dark liquid, rusted nameplates, signs with labels like Subject 04B, Fail, and Neural Link Calibration. One door read, Chimera Core. Claire stepped inside. The room was circular, lined with monitors. Most were shattered, but one remained. It flickered weakly and showed a paused video feed. Two girls, strapped to chairs, wires attached to their heads, her daughters. Claire reached out, tears flooding her mask, and hit play. A man's voice echoed from the speaker, flat and clinical. Subjects 11A and 11B are now exhibiting tele-empathic responses to the entity. Subject 11B is resisting. Subject 11A is fully synchronized. Claire watched in horror as Elise screamed and writhed in the chair, while Ava sat still, eyes locked forward, entranced. The video cut. Morgan stepped beside her. "You need to see what's in the lower chamber." They moved down a service tunnel half filled with water. Lights flickered above, and then an enormous viewing window. Beyond it, the trench, and something else, something moving. It was coiled in the dark, massive, slow, with eyes that didn't glow but absorbed the light around them. It pulsed like it was breathing. Kessler whispered, "That's the source. That's Leviathan Zero." Claire gripped the glass. "Why is it here? Why, my girls?" Morgan stared into the abyss. "Because it's not just alive, it's intelligent, and it's using them to find its way back to the surface." Claire backed away. "And when it does," Morgan said, "the whole world changes." A soft sound filled the chamber, laughter, two voices, faint, familiar, behind them. They turned, and there stood Ava and Elise, alive, changed, and smiling. They stood just beyond the reach of the chamber light, their thin forms half silhouetted against the shimmer of the abyss beyond. Ava and Elise, alive, barefoot in ragged grey fabric, their skin pale as porcelain and glowing faintly blue beneath the water's filtered light. Claire froze. Ava stepped forward first. Elise hung back. "Mom," Ava said softly, her voice echoing in the chamber, somehow louder than it should have been. "You came." Claire tore off her rebreather and nearly collapsed to her knees. Ava's voice, her real voice, the same one that used to whisper bedtime stories and scream at bees in the backyard. "I'm here," Claire breathed. "I'm here, baby." "Oh my God, Elise, sweetheart." Elise flinched. "She's not ready," Ava said, eyes distant. "She still fights it." Kessler raised his scanner. It buzzed like it was panicking. "Their vitals are irregular, not just human anymore. Their heart rates are sinking with the trench signal." Morgan's hand moved to her holster. Claire saw it. "Don't," she hissed. Ava tilted her head. "You think you're here to rescue us?" Claire stood, stepping between Morgan and her daughters. "Yes, that's exactly why I'm here." Elise suddenly let out a sob, a real broken cry. She stepped out of the shadows and ran into Claire's arms. Claire held her tight, shaking. "You found me," Elise whispered. "You really found me." "I never stopped looking," Claire whispered back, but Ava stood still, watching. "You shouldn't have come, Mom." Claire turned. "What do you mean?" "You brought them," Ava said, her eyes locking on Morgan and Kessler. "And they'll ruin everything." Morgan stepped forward. "You're under the control of something ancient, Ava. We can reverse it. There are treatments." "No," Ava interrupted. "You want to put us back in cages, but Leviathan showed us the truth." Claire's pulse spiked. "What truth?" "That the surface is dying, that your world poisons itself, and that something stronger is coming to take its place. Something deeper, cleaner, connected." "You don't understand," Claire pleaded. "You were just children when they took you." Ava looked at her with sad eyes. "We were children. Now we're messengers." Suddenly, the trench outside the chamber pulsed with light, and Leviathan moved. Its full form emerged for the first time, hundreds of feet long, 1,000 eyes opening in sequence across its body, each one showing fragments of time, memories, images, a great intelligence trapped beneath the earth for millennia. It had chosen Ava, and through her Elise. Kessler backed up. "We need to get out of here, now." "No," Ava said softly. She raised a hand, and every screen in the facility lit up at once. Dozens of video feeds showing other children, other facilities, all connected, all awakening. Chimera was bigger than anyone realized. "It's global," Morgan whispered. "Holy hell, this isn't just one project. This is an arc." Ava stepped forward. "We weren't meant to be saved. We were meant to be reborn." And then the ground shuddered. The glass of the trench window cracked. Leviathan was rising. Claire grabbed Elise's hand. "You're coming with me. We're going home." Elise clung to her. "Please don't leave, Ava." But Ava had already stepped back toward the darkness, her body dissolving into water like smoke into air. "She belongs to the deep now," Elise whispered. Morgan activated a distress beacon. "We've got 60 seconds. We move or we drown." The chamber groaned around them. Water burst through the lower vents. The glass finally gave. Kessler screamed, "Run!" They dragged Elise and ran through the collapsing corridor, Ava's voice echoing behind them. "You're not stopping it, Mom. You're just delaying the tide." They surfaced a mile from the wreckage. The boat was still there, barely, the sea churning violently around it. Morgan pulled them in, covered in blood from a gash on her shoulder. Kessler collapsed onto the deck, coughing up seawater. Claire held Elise close, wrapping her in a towel. The girl shivered violently, but she was there, human, alive and terrified. The trench behind them roared. A blue light pulsed beneath the surface, massive, slow, methodical. Leviathan hadn't stopped, it had simply noticed them. And it was. Thinking, Claire looked down at her daughter, her mind racing. She had one child back, but at what cost, and Ava? Ava had chosen the dark. They left the trench behind them, but it never really let them go. Back on shore, authorities took Elise into custody for observation. That's what they called it. Claire had screamed, clawed, threatened lawsuits. None of it mattered. Elise was property of a national security order now, monitored 24 hours a day in a white-walled underground facility just outside Halifax. No sunlight, no mirrors, just tests. "She's not a weapon," Claire had told them. "She's not a little girl anymore," Morgan replied flatly. 3 weeks passed. Claire never left the hotel near the compound. She kept her phone in her hand at all times, hoping for any call, any message. Elise spoke to her once over a secured video feed. Her voice was weak. Her eyes were tired. "They make me sleep in water now," she whispered. "They say it's better for my brain." Claire pressed her hand to the screen. "Do you feel her?" Elise nodded slowly. "Ava's still down there, but she's not Ava anymore." Meanwhile, Kessler vanished, gone without a trace, no calls, no emails. His apartment had been cleared out, files deleted, his lab stripped. When Claire asked Morgan what happened, all she said was, "He knew too much." Claire didn't trust her. Not anymore. But she needed her, because things were changing. It started in the ocean. Fishermen from Morocco to Maine reported strange sightings, massive shadows, deep humming sounds, flocks of birds dropping from the sky mid-flight over open waters. And every sonar buoy along the Atlantic Ridge began broadcasting the same signal Kessler had once tracked. The heartbeat, steady, pulsing, nearer. Morgan visited Claire one night, unannounced. Her face looked thinner, pale. She placed a sealed black envelope on the table. "I leave in 72 hours, she said. "There's a submarine team prepping to drop something into the trench, something nuclear. They're going to bury it, burn it, cut off the signal for good." Claire stared at the envelope. "And what's this?" Morgan didn't answer. She just turned and walked out. When Claire opened it, she found a single ID badge, Facility CH7, marked as Restricted, Phase, Recall. A note attached said only, "You want answers? Go down one last time." She did. 2 nights later, Claire slipped into the same suit, boarded a private transport arranged by Morgan, and descended alone, back to where her world had ended. The trench was quieter now, still, but something waited there, watching. She followed the collapsed tunnels until she reached the core chamber, now half flooded, lights dead, glass cracked. Then she heard it, a hum, faint, and a voice. "Mum." Ava stepped out of the dark like a ghost, not aged, not decayed, still 12, still small. But wrong. Her eyes were black pools, her skin shimmering faintly under the trench light. She was barefoot, unbothered by the pressure. She moved like she belonged there. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. Claire sobbed. "Ava, please. Come with me, we can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," Ava said, tilting her head. "I'm part of it now. I see everything." Claire reached for her. "I don't care. I'll take you broken, changed, anything. Just come home." Ava stepped back. "I am home." Claire dropped to her knees. "I miss you every second, every breath. You're my little girl." Ava's face twitched, a flash of the old her breaking through. Then she said something that made Claire's blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come down again." The floor shuddered beneath them. A sound, low and seismic, filled the chamber. Behind Ava, a shape moved, not Leviathan's body. Just one of its limbs coiling slowly. Ava touched her mother's face. "You should run, Mum, because it's not just me anymore." Claire screamed as the water ruptured the chamber wall, sucking her backward. She hit a beam, rolled, panicked. But Ava was gone, and so was the chamber. She woke up in a decompression tank 3 days later. Morgan sat beside her, silent. "Did it work?" Claire whispered, her voice raw. "No," Morgan said quietly. "Leviathan's still moving, and so are the others. We've confirmed 2. More sites in the Pacific. Children with the same DNA profile. They're calling it a new species." Claire sat up. "Where's Elise?" Morgan hesitated. "Gone. Escaped during the power outage while you were under. We think." Ava called to her. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. Gone. Both of them. Weeks later, on a rainy beach. In Ireland, a couple walking their dog found a new suitcase. This one was red. Stickers from 3 different cruise lines. Inside it, 2 wet dolls, and a photo of 2 girls, holding hands, standing at the bottom of the ocean, smiling,